get started, I just want to give a little plug for Pacific Community Ventures. If you're not familiar with who we are a nonprofit that is dedicated to the support and success of small businesses. Our mission is to invest in small businesses, create good jobs for working people, and make markets work for social good. And one way we do so is through our business advising program, which is putting on this webinar here today, where in addition to webinars and informational and educational experiences like this, we work to connect small business owners with volunteer business advisors to help you through your individualized challenges or opportunities that you're facing in your business. If you aren't yet working with an advisor through our business advising program, we invite you to sign up. I will add the sign up link in the chat box here, and I'll also follow up via email later today. All right, so without further ado, I will pass it over to Ferris to lead us through the presentation.
Thank you so much, Morgan, and thank you, of course, Pacific Community Ventures. I personally have benefited from your advising sessions in several other ways, so I encourage all of our audiences to leverage that because you know, it's great information and usually wonderful people to interact with. So thank you for that. And thank you for the opportunity today. Thank you all for joining as well. Welcome from all over the place. Love to see where all you're coming from. And I love some of you also said, like, I'm calling from the car. So please, I hope you're not having the screen on. I hope that you're just listening mode only. So please be safe. I'm going to share my screen if that's okay. So I have just a few slides just to make sure that we, you know, at least you know, keep us as a, you know, as a guide for us and just keeps us involved. And then I'm sure the slides will be available for you from Morgan after the presentation, and you're welcome to take any notes as you feel fits. Thank you for Pacific Community Venture. Thank you, Morgan. Again, this will be the art of asking for capital for your business, how to ask for money. So I know you probably have heard all kinds of things. I'm going to give it to you from two different perspectives. One as a person who've asked for money before, and then from a had worked with thousands of businesses to ask for money. So that's one aspect. And then having served on many of the communities' lending arms, approving those loans or giving those money out from that perspective as well. So hopefully it's a unique perspective for you with those two different views, having been on both of those aisles per se, as well as, you know, like what could happen. So just would love to hear just in the chat, you know, what stage of your business are you in? Are you a startup? Are you still in the idea stage? Are you existing? Startup usually means like you still, you know, you have some traction, but you haven't really, you know, launched maybe, or have launched a little bit, but have not made it a full-time job for yourself. So that's kind of like my definition of it. Existing meaning that you work the business full-time. Idea meaning that you're still exploring starting a business. Would love to see some of your that in the chat if that's possible. We'd appreciate that. It'll also help me as we go through the different stages of what we're going to talk about to kind of like touch on whatever model you're in. All right. It is a heavy content. When Morgan and I were talking about, it's like, well, how long does this take? I said, usually 4 weeks. She's like, okay, we have an hour. So what can we do? So I basically took all those 4 weeks and really took all the nuggets that needs to be learned from each one of them. And they're here today. So I'm hoping that you will learn the 4 weeks in 1 hour. And I know it will be a lot of content, but I feel like you could digest it. And then you can, hopefully you could leverage some of the resources that are offered by Pacific Community Ventures to unfold some of these definitions and the terminology we're going to discuss today. We can talk about how to ask for money. We're going to talk about an entrepreneur view. We're going to talk about what the investor looks for. We're going to talk about something called milestone funding, or, you know, rounds of funding. And then I'm going to maybe give you some ideas about creating a checklist and next steps. I would love to see just in the chat again, you'll see me asking for this throughout the whole hour per se. What would you like to get out of today's session? I know Morgan have forwarded me a few things from the people who already registered, so I will touch on those as well, but I'd love to see from you now, what would be one thing you would like to walk away from it? And unfortunately, there will not be checks at the end of this. So there'll be strategies on how to go after checks, but not from today's session. I could always write checks, but my checks bounce really hard. So I hope you could hold on to them because you'll be up and down really hard. All right. So here are the 4 pillars that I'm going to talk about today: entrepreneur perspective, investor perspective, next steps, and some practice ideas. All right. Just a little bit about us. I work with international strategic management. I work around these pillars: globalization, entrepreneurship, community, and education. I'm mentioning that because I want you to also know that the experience that I'm going to share is limited to this, right? You talking to a banker might give you a different perspective. I'm sharing information based on my personal experience and my work that I've been doing for the past 20 some years. I've been fortunate because I work with thousands of companies all over the world, roughly 61 countries. And here's some of their snippet of the logos. Some of them are really large and you know who they are. Some of them are so small, you never hear about them. And you might never hear about them again because they either were idea never launched or idea launched and they stayed small. You know, like I said, we've been lucky to do this in all over the world. And when you do it all over the world, you just learn and you get different perspective when you listen to all the wonderful people all over it. You can see some of our numbers on our website, but just a quick snippet, just to give you perspective that this is limited to the numbers that we're talking about. Also, it's also to those numbers. So hopefully you'll get some great insights from it. Personally, I'm originally from Palestine and came to the US during the first Gulf War and initially lived in Arizona and now in Michigan, but I've been to a few more states. I personally started my first business as a t-shirt business in 1991 to support me as I was just getting settled. And then in 1993, I learned how to bring perfumes and colognes, and I expanded that for about 7 offices in 5 states and about 500 people working from California to Florida. And then I had a few other ventures like everybody else, trying to sell things on the web and different auction sites. And then I joined Macy's, which is a big, large department stores. And I was part of their executive team, turning around some of their stress stores and some of the stress areas. And then, I did a few other things in that. And then in 2003, we founded International Strategic Management, focusing on serving underserved communities and minority groups and immigrant groups. The relevant experience to our discussion today, I'm not going to read all of them, but just to give you a snippet, I've been both, as a founder of a business as well as asking for money, but also a lot of roles before I even got here. And even while I'm here, serving on these communities where people ask for money and then they write checks. I personally managed a small fund for a couple of years, giving up to $25,000 to small businesses to start. And then those kinds of experience, I'm hoping to share with you what I've learned from that as well. All right, just as we keep going in the chat, you'll see this is a trend. One thing that inspires you. One thing that inspires you. Let's talk about the entrepreneur. I'd love to just hear from you, your perspective on an entrepreneur. And the reason I say that, because I usually would get you to walk me through this 4 photos, but we're not going to do that today. Just in a high level, what would be, and thank you for writing what inspires you. Hope, family, people, love that, passion. An entrepreneur view is somewhat, I always tell people, is somewhat diluted because you have an idea in your mind. And for those who are just getting started with an idea stage, you think it's clear, you feel like it's really solid, and then you articulate the story to someone and they're like, what are you talking about? They're like clueless about what you're trying to say, and they really don't see what you're seeing. It doesn't mean that they're really not smart. Actually, it's the opposite. It just means that they're trying to figure out what you're saying, and you're going to have to take some time to explain some things. So the more simpler you could get your message to be, the better it is you're going to get support if the person's looking to support you. So if you're asking, Morgan or someone from the Pacific community to support you, and they're like, well, I don't understand what you're trying to do. She's not telling you that because she doesn't like you or doesn't want you to succeed. She's telling you that because she's trying to figure out what is the best way to help or support you. So if you're asking for money, I don't even know what you're trying to do, most likely I'm not going to be as nice as Morgan, just because I don't even know what you're trying to do and you're asking me for money. So I'm going to just move on. So I call it the art of the ask. You have to know how to ask for that money. Can be just a pitch, which a lot of times people I see, they go and try to do that. They just want to pitch. They want to just tell you, okay, I'm due ABC and I'm looking for XYZ. That's nice, but it's not really how it works, okay? It's all about the relationships that you're building, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. So from your view, you're like, I just need this money to keep going. From their view, like, I need to understand the story and what's happening. How much money do you need is important to know. You might want to think about how to weave that into the story that you're going to share. how are you going to plan to pay them back? If I looked at your projections, does your finances and projections tell me the story of that you're planning to pay me back, or there's no line item to say loan payback or interest or anything like that, that now you're making me nervous. You want more money, but yet you don't even show it on your projections. Doesn't mean that you didn't plan it. It didn't show up. You want to think about, the time frame that you need this money for, because you might think I need it for a month, I need it for 6 months, I need it for. This is all part of you thinking through the story. So this is your perspective that I want you to leave today, thinking I need to make sure that I have all these answers for myself before I even go ask for money, because that's part of the ask, right? You have to have this art of knowing some of these questions. And then you have to also know that he or she or them may need to go and present your asking to a committee. A lot of the microfinance places, especially if you're looking for a CDFI, Community Development Financial Institute, so not a traditional bank, they don't really write checks on a personal level or a business level. They actually have a committee. So it's usually 3 to 5 people, diverse groups of people, and they have to present your ask to them. So if they don't understand what you're trying to do and they don't have all the answers, you're gonna put them in an awkward place that they most likely choose not to present you because they have other candidates, or 2, present you but can't defend you because they don't have the whole story. So just remember that. So let me ask you, what do investors invest in? Just in the chat, what would you think investors invest in? Do they invest in ideas? Do they invest in you? Here we go, people. What do you think they invest in? I see a lot so far, a couple of yous and people. Enthusiasm, okay. Possibilities, okay. Community focused projects, potential. So that's good. So yeah, it all depends on the investor. It's a good way to look at it. If the investor is looking for impact in the community, like what Pacific Community Ventures would do, then they're looking to see, are you going to hire any jobs from the local people? Are you going to improve the neighborhood? Are you going to fix that store? They're looking for that, right? If they're looking to, because they want to attract investors, it's a different approach. So love the answers. Yeah. So they usually invest in what I call the people. And I don't know if you guys have watched this or not, but I have it's a couple of minutes. I'm going to only show you like 1 minute of it, but then you can Google it and watch the rest of it. I'm going to see if this will work. When I think I shared the whole thing, but let's see. Oops. Can you hear it?
I'm really excited to share with you some findings that really surprised me about what makes companies succeed the most, what factors actually matter the most for startup success. I believe that the startup organization is one of the greatest forms to make the world a better place. If you take a group of people with the right equity incentives and organize them in a startup, you can unlock human potential in a way never before possible. You get them to achieve unbelievable things. But if the startup organization is so great, why do so many fail? That's what I wanted to find out. I wanted to find out what actually matters most for startup success. And I wanted to try to be systematic about it, avoid some of my instincts and maybe misperceptions I have from so many companies I've seen over the years. I wanted to know this because I've been starting businesses since I was 12 years old, when I sold candy at the bus stop in junior high school, to high school when I made solar energy devices, to college when I made loudspeakers. When I graduated from college, started software companies. And 20 years ago, I started Idea Lab. And in the last 20 years, we started more than 100 companies, many successes and many big failures. We learned a lot from those failures. So I tried to look across what factors accounted the most for company success and failure. So I looked at these 5. First, the idea. I used to think that the idea was everything. And I named my company Idea Lab, and how much I worship the aha moment when you first come up with the idea. But then over time, I came to think that maybe the team, the execution, adaptability, that mattered even more than the idea. I never thought I'd be quoting boxer Mike Tyson on the TED stage, but he once said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. And I think that's so true about business as well. So much about a team's execution is its ability to adapt to getting punched in the face by the customer. The customer is the true reality. that's why I came to think that the team maybe was the most important thing. Then I started looking at the business model. Does the company have a very clear path generating customer revenues? That started rising to the top in my thinking about maybe what mattered most for success. Then I looked at the funding. Sometimes companies received intense amount of funding. Maybe that's the most important thing. And then of course the timing. Is the idea way too early and the world's not ready for it? Is it early, meaning you're in advance and you have to educate the world? Is it just right, or is it too late?
All right. So I'm curious, you have 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1 is idea, 2 is team, 3 business model, 4 funding, 5 timing. So yes, you could go watch this video to thank you, Morgan, for posting it. If you Google Bill Gross Idea Labs, it'll also show up in lots of Google searches. So please continue to watch it there. But I'm curious from you, before you watch the whole thing yet, from 1 through 5, 1 is idea, 2 is team, 3 is business model, 4 is funding, 5 is timing. What do you think is what matters the most for a company's success? 1 through 5. Now, I know he talked about technology, so it's not all the same, but I'm just curious, what do you think? Ideas, team, time, team. Okay, so we're all over the place here. This is awesome. So I won't answer it, but I'm gonna want you to figure it out once you watch the video. And it's only, as you saw from this, it's only 4 minutes left. So 6 minutes video, but it's worth you watching because this is a legitimate organization that basically looked at what they've done and looked back and said what made a difference. What I will tell you from my learning is, for investors, which we're going to talk about next, is we used to hear this all the time in the boardrooms, which is I'll always invest in an A team and a B product, but never invest in a B team and an A product. So I'll say that again one more time. I'll always invest in an A team and a B product, but never invest in a B team and an A product. I'll let you decide what that means. And you could, if you want to share that thoughts with us in the chat, that's great. So from an entrepreneur perspective, you want to know your value. What value do you bring to your customers? These are things that you want to be aware of, right? I'm not going to go into too much details because I assume you're thinking already about this stuff. Understanding what you do and what opportunities are you creating, knowing your solutions, all these things are really important for you to understand. What does your product technology do versus what you're trying to do? I always tell people, make sure that you understand the purpose. And if your purpose of your business does not make sense, it doesn't mean that it's wrong. I just don't understand it. And you have to help me understand what you're trying to do. And I found this funny cartoon image. Who will buy, why will they buy it? These are things that I think you should all be thinking about to get this money. How do you ask for the money? Well, you have to have sometimes a business plan or a plan for the business, at least maybe a page or 2, something to show that this is what you're trying to do. That's you. Now let's talk about the investor. What do you think they're looking for? Well, this is the investor view. They're looking at you and thinking, where do you fit in within my portfolio of investments? Are you in the valley of death? Are you in the second stage? Are you in the mature stage? Where are you? And that allows me to think my risk and how much risk of my money is going to be at the table. So if you're in the valley of death, those who said idea stage, a couple of you earlier, the investors thinking, I may never see this money again. So I need to understand how realistic this person is, and do I buy into what they're saying or not? If you're already existing, which a couple of you were there as well, well, now I want to see, have you been trending as a growing company, or have you been trending as going down, or are you not consistent? What's going on there? So you have to understand the investors looking at you as an investment, and they need to understand where do you fit within their timetable, kind of like what you should be knowing about your business. They're looking at it and say, I need to know where I fit you in within my budget or where I'm going to invest. And then what types of investments are there out there today? Do you guys know? What types of investments? So you want an investment, but what kind of investments is out there today? If you know the answer, you could answer, a few of them in the chat. What type of investments or investors are there? There's 2 questions really. Type of investments and investors. Cool. Loan grants, investors. Okay. Loan and grants are types. Investor can be a loan or a grant. angel, okay, angel and equity, okay. So you're confusing a couple of keywords, which is okay. It's this is why we're all here. So from an investment type, there are really three types. They're either giving you money and they're taking debt, so you have to pay it back. They're even giving you money and taking equity, saying that I want to, in return, a profit share from your company. Or they're even giving you money and say, good luck, it's just a grant, it's a gift, and we wish you the best road. That's really the three types of investments. Now, investors, which many of you mentioned, is the other side, which is angel investors, VCs, impact investment, crowdfunding. These are all different ways that investors do, but they go back and say, even a crowdfunding, you could ask, are you going to do a debt? Are you going to do a charity like a giveaways, or are you going to do equity? They could do any of these people here, investors person here, can choose any of the three other tabs that I just mentioned, debt, equity, or grant. So if you can just remember that, so now you know what to ask for. Being clear about your ask will help you know that you understand the investor's language. I'm either giving you money and I want it back. I'm giving you money and I want a small piece of your company when you make some money, or I'm giving you money and I'm saying, good luck, just do whatever you need to do, right? That's what you want to think through when you're asking any of these tabs. Even when you're asking friends and family, you could say, can we equity? Can it be a grant? And I always tell people, if you ask for your friends and family, just tell them that please make sure that you give me money that you don't need ever again, because there's a chance that you never pay it back, and there's a chance that you pay back a lot of it. And you always think about, how is that Thanksgiving dinner going to go if you're owing them some money? They're saying that you shouldn't do it. I'm just saying, just be clear about what could happen there. And anyway, you guys listed a bunch of them, so I'm going to keep going. Who's usually really doing this? According to many studies, you will notice that most of the time the investments come from whom? According to the chart, 67% is from personal savings. And if you start actually adding all the personal savings, credit cards, and other things, you're probably looking at 75 to 80% of people invest in themselves. And less than maybe 2% to 3% comes from, you know, these VCs or angels or things of that nature, maybe less than 10% in total, okay? So I want you to be clear about that, because you also want to be realistic about what would it take to make this work or not. The investors always look to do something called due diligence. And I would love to hear, what does that mean to you when I say that, due diligence? What do you think that means? And by the way, they all do it. They might not tell you that they're doing it, but they all do it. Even your friends and family are doing it, right? They're thinking about the past and what you've done. They're thinking about what you said before and what you did versus what you said. They all do due diligence. Some are very formal with a checklist and people behind it, and some are completely informal, like your friends and family. So doing dotting and crossing dots. Okay, very good. Anything else about doing due diligence? Do the research. About what? What are they researching? It's a good point. They do some research. The company, the team, very good. The idea, the competitors, all those things, background checks is exactly right. So they're going to do their due diligence. So you want to make sure that you are upfront about what they're going to see or not see when they're doing their due diligence. Make sure that you know, the investors looking to hear, what is the ask? If I have to keep understanding what is the ask, are you asking for 50,000 or are you asking for 200,000? Are you asking for 10,000 or are you asking for 8,000? Because your numbers are not clear, or you're saying it in a way that is confusing. Make sure that the ask is clear, okay? They're going to ask themselves, you know, a few questions. And I'm going to give you a few questions that I've heard personally in those rooms, as well. I've seen people not necessarily say it, but think it, because I asked afterwards what happened. And this is what exactly those questions are. Anyone could think what these investors would ask themselves when they hear you ask for money or ask for funding. What do you think what do they think they're asking themselves? Love to see some of those things in the chat. What do you think they're asking themselves? Is this a good investment? Okay. And how do you think they would know if it's a good investment or not? Would I be a customer of this company? So they might ask that. They might not be a fit for that customer, but they might think that there is a customer. Okay, cool. Will they pay me back? Yeah, I'm sure. That's a very good question. And that's absolutely, I've always heard that. as an answer. And sometimes, by the way, the investors are willing to give you money knowing that you may never pay them back, but they're believing in the person that they're going to do something and it's going to become, it's going to keep moving forward, whether it's this company or something else. So here are some of the questions that I've heard before. Okay, the first thing they usually ask in their head, at least, do I like this person enough to keep listening? And this is why I say to people, your art of the story is so powerful, because if you can't articulate in a way that appeals to me to like you enough to listen to you to the next thing, I'm never going to get to trust or not trust you and to give you the chance to hear the story. So making sure that your things are clean, your slides are clean, your images are clear, your ask is clear. All these things you might think is not a big deal, but it's actually a big deal, because if there's a cloud around the ask, I'm confused and I don't have time for it. I need to move on. Once they say, do I like this person enough to listen to them, they're going to ask, do I trust this person? And the trust comes in a lot of factors. Are you stating things that they believe is true or not? Or are you claiming things that they know or believe is not? And remember, many times the investors see things that you have not seen because they get to hear this all day long from others before you. So do I buy the story, right? Am I buying into what happened to this person? Am I buying into what they've been doing? Am I buying into what they're going to be doing? These are the questions that they're asking themselves. And yes, one of the questions, you got it. Can I make my money back? Can I get it back? All those things are part of it. So I'm going to give you some ideas, because this is what I hear sometimes entrepreneurs say. Entrepreneurs say, I have no competition. How many of you guys here think that you have no competition? How many of you here thinks you have no competition? Do you have competition? Do you have no competition? What do you think? Write in the chat. I have no competition. I have competition. I have competition. Okay, competition. I have a lot of competition. That's what I usually like to hear, because if you're not real about who you have, then you're in trouble. So much competition. Okay, here is one, a unique. Okay, I like that. So watch what you say, because when an entrepreneur says, I have no competition, here's what the investor is listening to. I have no idea what I'm talking about. As a matter of fact, I don't even know if I've done any homework about this business or anything else like that. I might have only asked 2 of my buddies if they've ever would buy this business or not, or buy products from me. So you say I have no competition, the investors here, I have no clue what I'm talking about. So just please remember that. Even if you invented something brand new, which I've worked with a lot of people who have patents for their product or service, it does not mean that you have no competition, because your first competitor is what I call status quo. Someone is not going to change just because you invented something. When TV came on, there was a competition. It was those, hanging around the friends and family, playing in the backyard, going to the theater. There was a competition. Maybe it's not a direct competition, but there was a competition. So you have to understand that when you say I have no competition, they're thinking you've done no homework whatsoever and you're clueless about this business. So just be aware. How many of you think all I need is money? All I need is money. Just give me that 50K. Just give me that 100K. Just give me that $1,000. Okay, good. I'm seeing a bunch of no's. It's a good group of people we got. Maybe they don't need this training. All right. No, you need a plan. Okay, so you might say, all I need is this money to make this work. And guess what the investor's hearing? The last thing I ever will give you is my money, because they're going to know that you're going to need more money and more money and more money. Money is going to always be part of the equation, but it's not the only equation. All right. Who will specifically buy from you? You might say, I have invented something, it's bottles of water. Everybody's going to want bottled water. Who wouldn't want a bottle of water? Everybody wants a bottle of water. What do you think? And everybody's your customer? No? Okay. Nope. I'm seeing lots of nopes so far. But I have bottles of water. Not everybody's my customer? Not realistic. Okay, cool. You're absolutely correct. So when I hear everybody's my customer and everybody should buy, this is what the investors hear. I really want to waste all of your money, and I also want to waste all your time, because I'm going to just talk to every single person in the street to buy this bottle. Somebody's going to say this bottle of water is cheap, it's plastic, I will never buy it. Someone will say it's so expensive, I could get it free from the house. Someone's going to say it's not environmentally friendly. Someone's going to say it's not, in glass. Someone's going to say there are all kinds of things. Knowing who you doesn't mean that everybody's not welcome to buy it. It's just I'm going to spend my time and energy following certain kinds of customers. All right. So how do you make money is what then investors usually like to know. And if you are not clear about knowing how to make money, and usually I always tell people, be very specific. I manufacture t-shirts and I'm going to sell them to wholesale companies that will put them in retail stores. Or I'm going to manufacture the t-shirts and sell them directly to the customers through my website on my e-commerce. You want to be that specific. If you're not that specific, they're going to think that you just don't know how you're going to spend this money and how you're going to make money to even pay it back or even to stay in business. So they want to make sure that you have a clear understanding of it. How do we work together is one of the things that they always think about. And one of the things that I see sometimes entrepreneurs try to do is you try to put, I'm going to call it like a show in front of the investors. And the reality is the investors want to be as real as they can because they want to help support you. And if they can't support you in one area, they're part of a network. Remember that. They can plug you into other networks within their network. So you want to make sure that you also communicate with them. So what do you think they want to know? I gave you one hint here. So they want to open door communication. What else do you think they want to do when they're working with you or when you work with an investor? What do you think they want from you? How to work with them? How to work with this investor? Be open for advice. Now, remember, it is your business. So take the advice. You don't have to implement it, but acknowledging it and saying why you like it or dislike it is important. Honesty and clarity. Very good. Authenticity. Very good. Love it. So you guys are exactly on the right track, right? Keeping them posted. Don't disappear for 3 months and then come back and say, oh, I need a few more thousands. Well, where have you been the last few months? I haven't heard from you. What did you do with the first investments? What have you been doing since then? So keeping them posted, share good and bad, right? Don't just only call them when you're in a bad spot, call them when you're in a good spot. Celebrate those things. Even if it's, I call them small wins. You got a small thing or you hired someone and they were able to do something, celebrate those small wins. And, I always tell people, don't make me find out later on my own. Because if you tell me I'm really happy, I'm maybe not happy at the moment when you tell me, but I'm much happier than if I were to be in a meeting and someone tells me, this person's did this. I'm like, wait a second, did what? I don't want to be finding out about it from someone else. I want to hear it from you directly. Make sure that they see the big picture. You want money right now to open one location, but you have a plan to open 5 or 10 or franchise. Make sure that you tell them that, hey, one day I'd love to be able to franchise this idea and keep it going. At this moment, we just want to open one store in this location, or I want to open one office, or I want to service this. And then my goal is, as we continue to grow, to do this. Give them the big picture, but give them the details of the small picture because they want to know that you're legit. You're not just living in the dream land of this one big idea. So this is, one of the biggest thing that you might have heard. Investors like to, especially this happened after 2001, and it really expanded in 2008. Before that, it used to exist, but not as much. And this is what I'm going to call the milestone funding, or what they call rounds, okay? And there are lots of other names for it, but I'm giving you just 2. So milestone fundings and rounds. I'm curious, how many of you have heard of that terminology or have used it when you applied for a loan or for a fund before? So just, yes, no, maybe, use it, didn't use it first time, don't know what that is. Whatever you want to say in the chat, would love to see. So milestone funding, especially in the micro funding space, is a really key. They might never ask you for it, but the minute you show them this, they're going to believe in you a little bit more and probably give you some money more than you think, okay? And the milestone funding idea comes from one simple concept. You wanted $20,000 to launch that business or to expand your idea or to do whatever. And what you want to do is take that 20,000, break it up into what I'm going to call milestones, the amounts that's needed, the funds that are going to be used to do what, over what period of time, from which resource. So I'm giving you here an example. I want $20,000 in total, but I'm going to need it over the next, maybe 6 months. I don't need it all at once. I need over the next 6 months, but I need $3,500 to just get the business set up. And here's where the money's going to go to, right? Filing fees, initial inventory, ads, and I'm going to need that roughly for about a month. So within a month, I'm going to spend that $3,500. And I don't need money from you for this. I'm going to have my friends and family give me that money because they said they would love to see me start this business, right? That's great. Then I'm going to need another $5,000. Who's that from? What are you going to use the money for? What is the funds going to go to? And how much of a period of time? I'm making this up, but let's just say you're going to need that over 2 months of time, or maybe 1 month of time. And you're going to use that money to do a grand opening celebrations, invite the mayor, have ribbon cutting, do an ad on the social media, hire someone for photography. Write all of those things down so I know that you're taking that money and doing these things with it. And the write down, I'm going to spend that within a month or 2 months. And the source will be, I'm looking for an investor, right? I'm looking for equity take or whatever you would say. So that's really what you're doing here, breaking it down with the big ask of the 20,000 and then the smaller chunks of what's needed. So it's called milestone funding, because the investor might look at this and say, you know what? I'm willing to give you $8,500. Let's just get this going and see how it goes. And let's come back and visit and see if you need that $7,500 or more. Or they might approve you for the 20,000, but only allow you to withdraw the first $3,500 to see what you've done. And if you came back a week earlier and say, you know what, we already spent it, we actually are good for the next 6 weeks, so maybe we could hold off on the next 5 for another week or 2, they're going to like that. If you needed more, they're at least now managing, how much losses are they willing to give up before things happen. And they're now trying to build a rapport with you because maybe they were trying to test and see if they should give you the whole amount or not all of it or parts of it. And sometimes, by the way, the funders have limitations. So you might be asking for 100K. I could only give you 50. So if I know that you could secure it somewhere else, or maybe I can call one of my buddies who could also go up to 50. Now I could help you secure that whole total that you're looking for. So just think about it as, again, part of, and the same terminology called milestone funding or rounds. So round 1, I need $3,500. At round 2, I need another 5. Round 3, I need another 7,500. So think through these ideas, guys. And again, I'm not trying to tell you what to do with this. I'm just trying to hopefully give you insights of what investors would look at. And the more specifics you are about the money and what's going to happen with the money, the better chances you get with you receiving that money.
Before we move on, Faris, we just had a question that asked, are those amounts, uses, and times just estimates? Or do you have to report back on that?
Yeah, so usually they're based on, I'm going to call them true estimates. I'm going to talk about that next, which is, you want to make sure that you have like maybe what I call, an RFP out or get some 3 quotes from someone. So you might say, I'm going to build a website. I need $5,000. Well, how did you come up with that number? Did you just Google it? Did you get 3 people to say it's cost you this much to do these things? How did you do that? So that's part of how the investors reviewing you and part of that whole trust and saying, do I trust this person enough to keep it going or should I cut it off now? Great question. So I wouldn't say that come up with these numbers on top of your head. I would say that this is something that you want to spend some time developing and also knowing. It takes me, for instance, registering the business. It's probably free in most states. It might be $50 in some states. If you want to register with the state, maybe $100. But there's also other things involved with that, which is a lawyer, which maybe take $500. And then maybe some of your time and maybe an admin time. You can't say, I'm the CEO of my business, so I'm going to write me a check for $2,000. Well, you can, but the investors won't, right? The investors say, oh, it's going to take you 10 hours. All right, so maybe what's a decent salary of a person doing this job, not a CEO, a person doing this job, and maybe it's $25 an hour. All right, so let's go ahead and pay you for the $25 for the 10 hours. So now I know I need about 250 more plus the 500 plus the 100. Well, now I'm looking at maybe $1,000. And you can budget that as $1,000 part of your business, legally registrations. They're going to like seeing that because now they know that you took the time to come up with that number. It is not just someone's salary. Although people love to invest in people, they'll never pay someone's salary for you just to hire. If you say, all I need is to hire this person, they can tell you good luck. But if you say, I need to do this program, which is a marketing program, which includes ads on Facebook, ads on Google. I need a new laptop and I need a subscription to this software. And yes, by the way, I do need to hire a person to do this work, and I need a desk and I need a light. Well, then it's a program that you're deploying, not a person that you're hiring. So how you ask for it, this is why I said it's an art. It's important, because if you say, give me money to hire a person, they're going to be very nervous, because what happens if that person quits or decides not to work with you? Or God forbid something happens to them or to you. But if you say, I want to create this program, if it's a marketing program or a target marketing program, whatever you want to call it, or operation program, and I'm going to have all these things in it, and part of that is a small portion that goes to a salary, or a big portion goes to the salary, then I understand that you're looking at a global view, not just one thing, and you understand that you're going to need more money than just the person's salary to cover your business. Great question. Yeah, and by the way, keep feeding them in, Morgan, if because I know I'm moving pretty fast. All right, so this is practice the ask, I'm gonna call it. Okay, you want to try to get your story to be about 1 to 2 minutes. Now, I know people say 30 seconds or 1 minute elevator pitch, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't have to be a pitch. And you have to remember, each time you have a pitch could be for something different. This is a funding pitch, right? So it has to be around the funding idea. I'm giving you some questions you might want to think about answering when you're thinking about pitching for funding. If you're pitching to sell, it's a different pitch, but this is like what you want to think about when you're asking for funding. The truth is, let me ask you this actually, before I say anything. Do you think you could tell anyone everything about your business within 1 to 2 minutes? Yes or no? Yes or no? Can you tell anyone everything they need to know about your business within 1 or 2 minutes? No. Okay, so far no's. Okay, nobody likes my question. Why do you say no? Well, it's really clear. It's not possible. I would hope that your business is not that simple that within 1 minute or two, I know everything about your business. So please be clear about this 1 or 2 minutes. It's not to get them to know your business. It's to get them to think, I like what this person is saying. I would like to hear more. So this 1 or 2 minutes, I'm going to call it a hook. It's kind of like if you were to apply for a job, and before you applied, someone calls you up and say, hey, you got a job here. We see you report tomorrow to work. If you do, you're asking for trouble, because you don't know how crazy these people are and what they're going to ask you to do. And you don't know what they're going to pay you or not pay you or whatever. So just be careful if you do accept that kind of offer. The same thing with this investor pitch, right? If they tell you within this 1 or 2 minutes, here's your $50,000 check, I would encourage you to run, because you don't know what comes with that $50,000 check. Most likely, if they're crazy enough to give it to you on the spot, they're probably going to be crazy to ask you to do some crazy things. So be careful, right? Most likely what will happen is what I've seen with a lot of them. They'll say, you know what, this is really interesting. Let's set up a meeting. Then you'll have 15 minutes to maybe half hour to maybe an hour to go through. And that might lead to another hour or two of another meeting or another meeting. And on average, my experience with angel investors, and I call them microfinance individuals, it takes somewhere between 3 to 6 meetings over a period of 6 to 9 months. Occasionally you could get a little luckier, but just generally speaking, that's the time, because it just takes time to process all of this stuff. So don't take this 1 or 2 minutes and try to say, I need to add this one more piece of information. I have 1 second here. No, take the time to really explain it correctly. So therefore, when they're listening to you, they're comprehending what you're saying, and they're getting a clear picture to say, you know what, let's have another meeting where you could come and present to me what you're trying to do. And that's when you could have slides. That's when you could have all this other stuff. For this one, you want to be able to, spell it out pretty fast. And remember, don't pitch, tell a story. So weave in how you got there. Weave in what made you discover that this is a business. Weave in how do you think it's going to grow. Weave in how you're going to make money on it. Weave all these stories in. Weave in what you've been doing on it. I've attended this workshop. I've attended this other workshop. Pacific Community Ventures helped me, align with a business coach, and help me, talk to someone over the next 3 weeks over how to do operations better. Whatever the scenario is, think through that, because this is part of your story. All right. And make sure that we talked about this already, so I'm not going to drill on it again. Making sure that you have milestone funding. Sometimes you might call it funding rounds. So you might say funding round 1, funding round 2, funding round 3. And that's something you could do. And then the last thing I'm going to tell you in this practice is you got to ask for it. You got to ask for money. If you don't ask, then they're like, why are we here, right? So you have to have an ask, and it has to be clear. Get feedback and structure your story really well. And I think there are lots of ways that you could do that within the community that you have, as well as the entrepreneurs that you have, or the different. And I could tell you my experience with a lot of these investors, they want to help you figure out how to say it better so they could help you get more money to keep going, because they know that you're never going to be ending with the money that they're going to give you the first round with it. So practice, 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 practice. Our last portion of today's talk is really about next steps and how do you do it. And this is where I think I will address one of the questions that you asked, is create an invoice for when you're asking for those money, right? Because sometimes they want to fund you themselves. They want to see an invoice with the business name. Make sure that you have an invoice. How does the invoice come? The invoice could come from 3 proposals of the work. I want to launch a website for my business and I need money for it. Well, now I need to go and find 3 companies that do website development and ask them to give me a proposal, then see which one would make best sense for me, and then include that in my invoice. I need $1,500 from you, because as you can see, 1,250 is going to go to this ABC company. Is going to do me my 1-page website, or whatever that is. Okay. Have details of these milestones to be accomplished. Don't say a milestone accomplished is open the store. Well, that's big milestone. What's the details of opening the store? Furniture, fixtures, hiring staff, all those things are part of the, milestone details. And please, make sure that you thinking through all the details and other ideas you might come up with that you may want to have. Maybe having an RFP, request for proposal, meaning that you put a statement out there, say, I am looking for this type of person to do this kind of work. Please send a proposal for me to see if we are interested in working with you. Or just calling 3 companies and getting 3 quotes from them. Either one, just think through what would make best sense for you and for the people that you're going to ask for money to support you with this business. And remember, don't ask just for the invoice that you're getting from them. Ask for a little bit more, because you're going to need someone to manage that piece. And you should be paying that someone, even if it's you, maybe not at the CEO rate, but as an administrator rate to keep you working there. So we already covered the milestone. I want to leave a little bit of time for Q&A, because I know we had more questions that came through now. I want to make sure we have time for that. We covered, I know, a lot, and I know we went through a lot, and I appreciate your engagement. I appreciate you guys really your support by answering the questions and entertaining some of them. I know we talked about the entrepreneur, the investors, how to practice for your ask, and what some of the next steps could be of getting some of these resources lined up. And I hope that helps you to keep going. If you have any thoughts, by the way, this is an SQR for survey. It's going to ask you for what you liked or didn't like. I'm sure Pacific Community probably do something similar. So if you want to do this, that's fine. If not, Pacific Community will do something with you. But if you take your phone and answer this 3 or 4 questions asking about what you liked or didn't like about today's session, feedback from me. And you could be anonymous if you choose to, if you don't want to give us all your information, but I really appreciate any good, bad, or ugly. I'm going to stop so we could open it for Q&A, and I will stop sharing. So therefore, we could be here.
Big screen.
Thank you all, by the way. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your questions and your comments. Morgan, do you have any questions? I'm sorry, I was trying to capture some of them, but.
Yes, we've got some questions that came in through the chat. Thank you so much. First and foremost, thank you. We've got lots of thank yous in the chat as well. One question is, if you were to pick one thing that is the most important to present to an investor, what would it be?
Yeah, I mean, they're looking for your business model. They want to make sure that you are clear about how to make money. The one thing will be is, how do you make money? Making sure you understand that. Now, the truth is they'll invest in you without knowing that. But if you were to say, what would it be? I would say that.
Mm-hmm. Should we do research on the investors?
Absolutely, because each investor invests in different things. So you'll find investors that want to invest in restaurants. You'll find investors that want to invest in equipment. You'll find investors that want to invest in infrastructure. You'll find investors that want to invest in a certain type of community. So for instance, in Detroit, there are investors that want to invest only in certain neighborhoods. So if you're not in that neighborhood, then you're just wasting their time and your time by asking them. They also might only go up to 50,000 or 150,000, and you're looking for $250,000. not saying that you shouldn't ask for them, but if you didn't do enough homework to say, I need from you 50, because you know that's their max, and I'm looking for 150, and here's where the other 100 is going to come from, then you also might minimize your chance of getting that money because they know you didn't do enough homework. Some investors looking for IT, and some of them looking for website builders. Everyone is going to be different. I would encourage you to do your homework researching the investors. And this is why the question before this, you know, if you narrow it down to one, what would be? And I said business model. The truth is, it really depends on the business you're in, how much money you're asking for, who you are, where you are, what type of business you're going to be. All those things will make me change my answer based on those facts.
Yeah, it's a tough question to answer, just one.
Depends. My
You have
answer
a 4-week course on it, right?
Yeah, it depends. The answer is depends.
Oh. If I'm moving my business from one state to another for better opportunities, would the move be an area of concern for investors?
They would want to know why, because when you're uprooting something, especially if you're established, then they're like, why are you moving? Plus, I would encourage before you make any moves to do two things. One, connect with your economic development agency for the city, state, or for the county. And then two, connect with the state that you're going to move to and the same thing, economic development agency there. So if you just Google economic development and then the city you're in or economic development state that you're in, it will list for you those organizations. And many times they have what they call attraction and retention programs. So they might be able to give you incentives or support you in a different way to help you stay where you are, as well as the new location might be able to do the same. So maybe you don't need to move, maybe you just expand to another state. Could be a bigger opportunity than my experience has been the entrepreneurs, sometimes you limit your opportunity because you're afraid to share. And the minute you share what your really ultimate goal is, you're going to get the support that you need to even be bigger than what you thought you could ever be.
What is trending in low-income communities around ideas and funding?
That's a tough question because each community is different. And I am lucky enough to work in lots of these communities from Michigan to different states, 7 states per se that I've worked with in the US and all over the world. Each one of them is different. One thing I am noticing is the whole social entrepreneurship expansion and what I'm going to call the third place, meaning that creating places for the community to come to and be part of. So third place, meaning that I'm going to open a coffee shop, but portion of the coffee shop will be for community and it's open all the time for them to come and use whatever way they want to. That's something you could just Google the term third space, and there'll be all kinds of articles and information about it. And then the social entrepreneurship, meaning that I'm going to do something that will make an impact in my community. I will also share this. I've not yet, in my 30-some years of working with entrepreneurs, met an entrepreneur that all they want to do is make money. Not yet. I'm not saying they don't exist. I don't know the answer. I just know the ones I've met, they've always made an impact in the communities that they lived and worked in. They're the ones who are usually buying the Boy Scouts cookies or Girl Scouts cookies. They're the ones who are sponsoring an event in their neighborhood, a soccer game, a hockey game, things of that nature. So most entrepreneurs want to do really well. There is an opportunity today to be a social entrepreneur because that also could just bring attention to you than just saying starting a business. But most of the business I've worked with or seen always have had some kind of give backs. And most of the times I'm one of them, never really reported it nor recorded it. And I'm trying to do a better job of capturing it because we don't really do it because we want to report it. We do it because we're part of the community. So it's a tougher thing. And I think you could maybe start thinking about that. So social entrepreneurship and third places would be the two things that I'm seeing more trends of.
Thank you. How do you feel about white label support or products?
White label support for products. I know what white label is, but I'm not sure if I understand the question. So if you're saying, if you're going to sell a product that someone else is making and you're just going to put your name on it and sell it, I think remember, it's not about the product or service, about the entrepreneur, their commitment to making the business work, and you having a clear path of how do you think you're going to make this work. That's really more important than whether the product is white labeled or not. Being able to resell other people's products could be a blessing if that's what makes sense to you and to the communities that you're serving.
Thank you. Next question is, are business credit cards a good place to start before asking for money?
Most entrepreneurs, as you saw from the chart from Inc. magazine, start with those credit cards. I will caution you just a little bit because sometimes you might be able to get better deals from your CDFIs in your community, your Community Development Financial Institute, what CDFI stands for. And with today's COVID days, there's actually much more opportunities for you to get, I'm going to call it cheaper money, easier money, better money, because, or smarter money, because it comes with the knowledge of the people and the connections that you have and the power of leveraging that community that you're in versus just you on your own taking credit cards. I think a lot of times entrepreneurs get stuck because they want to keep all the information for themselves because they're afraid about something. And my experience has been, you got to be strategic about who you surround yourself with, because those individuals can open up doors that you could never be invited to be in that building, to be in that door to even open. So that money from the CDFI that you might get might give you more money than you even needed, or even less money than you needed, but the connections and the network and the learnings that you gain from it is much bigger than just that one incident of one transaction.
I know we're right at the hour. Do you have a few minutes more for questions, or
Yeah.
should we follow up? Yes?
We have, let me just make sure I'm not late.
I want to be respectful of your time, but we do have a couple more questions.
Yeah, well, let's spend 5 more minutes at least, and then we could, we'll call it off. But then I'm obviously happy to answer any questions as follow-ups. Happy to. I see a couple of them saying, would you give us a pitch deck feedback? I'm happy to do that, and I'm happy to spend even to listen to the deck if they want to record it, and I'm happy to do that. No problem.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We'll get a few more questions in, and if we don't get your questions answered, I'll send them to Ferris and try to get some answers sent out in that follow-up email. And I'll share along his contact information there as well. Where do you look for investors?
So it depends what investors you're looking for. So angel investors are usually small net groups of people that if you're not part of the circles or invited, they seem to not be as, they have become much more open, I would say, even post-COVID or during COVID than they've ever seen before. And the reason for it, because again, they're investing in people, they're not investing in ideas. They already hear a lot of ideas. But there, in any community, there's always probably an angel group that usually meets, and there might be an angel association. So in Michigan, there's a venture capital association, there's an angel association. You could search them that way. But I would say the networks that you have, the organization that you belong to, and just letting people know that this is what you're looking for. I think Pacific Community Venture has wonderful resources for that as well. So if you Google CDFI, that would be a good place to start. If there's a pitch competition within your city, is a good place for you to see who is judging and who is on the judging panel or who is in the audience. Sometimes they're sitting there. So those kinds of ways could help you. So Google the term Angel Association for your state or city. There probably will be one. Most all states have an Angel Association. Angel Committee or Angel Community, and business angel community, you might find something like that as well. And of course, it's all about the network, and I think you just need to network around to make sure that everybody knows that you are looking for money. I always tell people, if you have perfect credit and you don't need, and you have a house and you have ways that you could leverage, then go to the bank. You don't need anyone else. But if you don't, and you need to build those things up, then this is where CDFIs or angel investors or just people in your community might be willing to invest. We help set up a couple of programs around this, actually here around the world, with microfinance. And the idea was to bring 3 to 5 entrepreneurs together, put them through a specific training together, so therefore they're all speaking the same language, and then give them a small fund that they could manage on their own with a little bit of supervision from us. An example is $5,000 that they could lend to each other, with the understanding that if one of them fail, everybody else has to pitch in for that $5,000 to come back, so we could lend it to someone else or take it and give it to another community. So this is why I go back to your network is where you want to start. and asking your network to do it. And if you are not in the right networks because you're in the you don't have that kind of circle, you're already in the Pacific Community Network, you're welcome to reach out to me as well. All those things could potentially help you lead to where you need to go. But I would start with your network initially.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ferris, being respectful of your time and everyone's time on the call. We'll cut it off here. I do see a couple more questions we didn't get to answer, but I'll see if we can get those answered via email.
Yeah.
I will send a follow-up note either later today or tomorrow with a recording from today's session, the presentation slides, and some of those links and resources that we've been sharing in the chat box. And before we go, I just want to send a huge thank you to Ferris for joining us here today. We had so many thank yous in the chat box roll in for spending your time and sharing your expertise with us here today. Much gratitude. Bless your family, says Deborah, and I echo that as well. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much as well. Have a great day. And thank you for all for joining, and thank you for the opportunity, Morgan.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Soon.